What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Allen, and today we're going to be flying solo. It's just me. As you saw on Instagram, I mentioned we're going to be doing, just for now, we're going to be doing it every other week. So every other week, you're going to be hearing from me, and then on those other weeks, or I guess I should say every other week, you're going to be hearing from a guest, and then in those in-between weeks, you get to hear from myself. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter solo episode, usually around 15 to 30 minutes is kind of what you can expect. Just touching on various topics, and it could even be stuff that maybe the guest mentioned, diving deeper into it, whatever it might be. We're just going to be diving in just us, and and then every other week you get to hear from a guest. That's how it's just going to be for right now, just as we're starting to build this thing and accumulating more guests. Which, on that note, before we dive too deep in here, if you would like to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out. I would love to chat with you on here. And so reach out, let me know. You can either shoot me a DM at Into the Uncomfortable or email jake@intotheuncomfortable.com. Regardless, all my info is going to be in the show notes. If you'd like to be a guest on this show, please check that out and let me know. Or if you just want to know more about it, whatever the case may be. But anyways, without further ado, with all that out of the way, let's dive into this. So basically what we're going to be talking about today is, what is self-care really? Like, we talk about self-care a lot, right? And I have my Self-Care Sunday little series that I do on Instagram, at Into the Uncomfortable. Shameless plug. But I have my, I have my little series I do on there, and self-care is something I talk about a lot on this podcast, something I'm very passionate about, right? And so, but why? Why does self-care matter? And also, what does self-care even have to do with Into the Uncomfortable? And truth be told, there's a lot of levels to this. So we're going to dive into that, kind of unpack it all, and unpack how we can be better caring for ourselves as well. So anyways, we're basically going to break this down into different categories. We're going to break self-care down into the physical category, into the mental/emotional category, into the spiritual category, and into the social category. And just how self-care relates to all those things and some ways to practice it. So anyways, without further ado, let's dive into number one, the physical side of self-care. Now, this could be a lot of things. This could be many different things for you. There's a variety of ways that we can care for ourselves physically. Obviously, for many of us, I'm sure the very first thing that comes to mind when you hear that is working out. To me, that's honestly one of the biggest things that physical self-care is. But to some people, maybe that's not the case. Maybe that's not you. That's okay. But we need to make sure that we're moving our bodies in some way. Whether that's going to the gym and lifting weights, whether that's just going for a walk, whether that's, I don't know. I don't know what it is for you. Maybe it's riding your bike. Maybe it's an activity. Maybe you live near the mountains. You like to ski a lot. Maybe you live near the ocean and surfing is your thing. Whatever it might be for you, as long as you're getting out there and moving your body, that's what's important, right? Lifting weights. I love personally lifting weights. I love going to the gym. I love building up my physicality and building muscle. To me, that inspires me to keep going. That really helps me in all aspects of my life. I've talked about on here before about how I've noticed like it compounds in different areas of my life. And like when I'm working out and when I'm, really focusing on doing that, I notice it really filling out other areas of my life. And when I'm going hard in a workout, I notice that in my work, I see the same motivation versus if I'm being lazy, I'm not doing that, it carries over into other aspects of my life, whether it be work, relationships, whatever. So it's all basically up to you and up to what you like and up to what helps you and what motivates you and what pushes you. But at the core of it, at the root of it all, what's truly important is that you're pushing yourself and you're going and you're moving your body, right? But on that note, there's a lot deeper levels to this whole thing and this whole self-care thing than just working out and just moving your body. As far as physicality goes, one of the other big things is what you put in your body and the ways you're taking care of yourself and your health. So caring for yourself or self-care in our world can a lot of times, I think, have the wrong spin on it. I think, and whether that's Instagram's fault or whoever, doesn't matter. The point is, a lot of times we view self-care as like, well, I'm going to go crack open a whole bottle of wine. I'm going to drink a whole bottle of wine and eat a bunch of junk food and, whatever. And it's like that. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I think it was a Vine or something forever ago, but it's the older lady. And she's like, I'm going to eat I'm butchering it. Sorry. I'm going to eat breads and cakes and get all fat and sassy. And like, that's how a lot of people view self-care. And it's like, that's not really self-care. Now, those things here and there in moderation from time to time, are they bad? No, not at all. Right? But that's not self-care at the end of the day. That's not truly caring for yourself. Truly caring for yourself and practicing real self-care looks like doing the hard things and the uncomfortable things, right? And choosing the healthier options and making sure you're putting good things in yourself. And on top of just eating good foods, taking supplements that are going to help you. I'll do more on this soon. I need to make some videos and stuff and share some stuff about what I take. And, but just a couple of things that come to mind: magnesium, vitamin D. A good supplement to take that I like to take, I take it every day, is lion's mane. It's a mushroom. You can buy the powder. I'll put the link in my show notes if you want to check that out. But anyways, if you're putting these things in you, these things help you. And for example, like the lion's mane helps with your brain. It helps your focus and your concentration. And it's doing the things that are going to, so basically what you put in your body is what you put out, right? So what you take in is what you put out into the world. And so if you're eating junk food and you're eating these things that are going to be hard on your body, you're not going to be able to put your best self out there. So how in any world is that taking care of yourself, right? How is that caring for yourself? It's not. It's just plain and simple. It's not. What goes in is what's going to come out. It's going to reflect, right? If you're eating a bunch of junk food and garbage that's going to make you all foggy, you're not going to be able to put your best self out there. That's just how it is. Versus if you're eating things that are going to fuel your brain and that are going to make you feel better, and they're the more uncomfortable thing, granted, right? A nice cheeseburger and fries is always going to sound better than grilled chicken and rice, or than, whatever. And a lot of people say that, well, that's not true. Yeah, no, it is, bro. Let's be real. Okay, the greasy, fatty food honestly tastes better, but that's not the point, okay? In reality, you have to think about the long-term result, and that's what real self-care is how am I caring for myself, not just in this present moment, but going forward? How can I best care for myself, not just right now, not just doing what feels good right now, because that's what the world paints self-care as. How can you feel better right now in this moment? No, what's really caring, if you're going to, take for example, say maybe a plant. I'm looking at a plant right now, so that's where that comes to mind. But say, for example, a plant. If you're caring for a plant, it's a long-term thing, right? You don't do, wow, that was a really bad analogy. I'm suddenly realizing in this moment, but I don't know, whatever the case may be. Okay, that analogy's dead. We're going to just move on from that and pretend that didn't happen, but it's all good, right? So essentially, at the end of the day, you just got to realize that caring for yourself is a long-term game, truly caring for yourself. And it's not about pleasure, though that's a part of it, right? Pleasure is a part of it. You want to still enjoy life. There's good pleasure, 100%, totally. Those things in moderation, like I said, are good. But true self-care, what that really looks like at the end of the day is saying not just what feels good right now, what is going to benefit me down the road. And that is actually where true pleasure comes in. I actually spoke recently with a friend of mine. Her name's Lauren. She's a pleasure coach. We talked all about pleasure and how pleasure is actually an uncomfortable thing and what true pleasure is. Stay tuned for her episode dropping soon. I can't wait for you guys to hear this. It's incredible conversation. But anyways, yeah. And so as far as the physical side goes, just to recap on that, move your body and then focus on what you're putting in, because what you put in is what you're going to put back out into the world. And yeah, so moving on to the mental and emotional side of things, as far as self-care goes, rest and recharge. I think one of the very first self-care Sunday videos that I did, and something I talk about a lot, is just the importance of rest and breathing. And I've said before too that the reason I talk about that is because it's something I struggle with. I'm not very good at it. And it's because I'm passionate about this. I always want to keep working because I love what I do and this is fun for me, and I don't even get paid to do this right now, right? But I love it so much. But if I never let myself rest and recharge, I'm going to burn out and eventually build resentment towards it and hate it. And so that's for anything in life, you need rest and you need to recharge because you're going to burn out on life if you don't. So just something to keep in mind, the importance of rest. Rest doesn't even mean be lazy. Rest doesn't mean do nothing. Rest simply just means do something that's going to help you recharge. That's why I almost like the word recharge more, is because that's what it truly is about. It's truly about making sure, and through that even comes going back to the health side of it, like making sure you're sleeping good, making sure you're, drinking enough water. And that's all a part of rest and recharge. It all ties together at the end of the day. That's kind of what you're going to see, is that this all ties together. And then another part of that is watching your social media scrolling. I think as far as caring for ourselves, that's so instrumental and it's so key, is I know a lot of people say, create more than you consume. And I think that's great. I also really just, watch what you're taking in. Not just how much you're taking in, but what specifically you're taking in. Because if you're constantly, comparing yourself to other people, if you're constantly in the news, if you're constantly in just all these other people's lives, you're not going to be able to really focus on yours, and you're not going to be able to take care of yourself through that, because you're not going to even know what's going on with you because you're so caught up in what's going on with everybody else, right? And then as far as the comparison goes, that's definitely not caring for yourself. You're putting yourself down and making yourself less than all these other people, and not in a humility, good kind of way, in a negative, downer kind of way. That's not caring for yourself at all, right? So, watch what you consume, both in, what you're consuming and also the quantity. Just, actually right now, I want to challenge you to go, if you have an iPhone, I don't know if Android has the same thing, but if you have an iPhone and, you're listening to this, take a second, go right now, look at your screen time and see how much it is for social media. I guarantee you it's going to shock you, and it might make you a little sick to your stomach to realize how much time you're wasting on all these apps. And we're all guilty of it. It's something we all, it's just a part of today's world. But we got to be able to find a way to manage it. And like I said, self-care is a long-term thing. This isn't something you're going to just figure out overnight. I know a lot of people end up doing social media fast and getting off social media because they get so burnt out with it. I've done that myself. I got off social media for, almost a year, and it was great. I loved not being on it, but I realized that if I want to be doing this and I want to be helping other people and spreading this message, I can't not be on it. And so you got to be able to find a way to, I've built so many relationships and kept up with people through social media. So it's a great tool, but just like any tool, you got to figure out how to use it smartly and safely in a way that's going to benefit you in the long run. And that's going to help you, and be a useful tool to you. So it's all about finding that balance and finding a way to manage it. I don't have the perfect answer for you on that. I'm still trying to figure it out myself. I think, especially as like a creator, it's even harder because like you're having to be on there a lot, sharing stuff. And yeah, it's a tough thing. But if anyone has the answers, let me know. I'd love to hear them. But point is, it's just, it starts with awareness, and that's what we know. And so if you can be aware of it, that's where it starts. Another note on the mental, emotional side of things is being patient with yourself. Being patient with yourself as you figure out this whole thing. And that's all starts with self-care. And whatever it is, maybe you're trying to heal from something. Maybe you're trying to build something. You're trying to create something. You're trying to start or stop a habit, whatever it is. Be patient with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. We talked about that on the episode a couple of weeks ago when I talked about like when you're feeling down and just being patient with yourself, being gentle. And if you remember, we also talked about feeling it to heal it and the importance of feeling your feelings. And that's something I've talked about quite a bit, right? We got to be able to feel these feelings, and we got to be able to be fully human. That's a part of self-care. Self-care is so much more, guys, than drinking wine in a bathtub and eating, I don't know, cheese or whatever. Whatever self-care or whatever the world paints self-care as. It's so much more than that, like for real. And we got to understand that, and we got to recognize that. And that self-care is honestly, at the core of it, it's literally, what the word says. It's caring for ourselves. How do we care for ourselves? By feeling our emotions, stuffing our emotions, suppressing our emotions, and pretending that everything's fine. That's not caring for ourselves. Why? Because that's going to hurt us more in the long run. So really everything to do with self-care is it's not in the present. It's all what's going to, in the long run, what's going to benefit us in the long run, what's going to help us most in the long, grand scheme of life. But yeah, it all comes down to self-awareness, and it all comes down to knowing yourself, knowing what's going on in your mind, knowing where your brain's at, where your mind's at, and being able to really just feel that human experience, feel those emotions, and be okay with it, and then being able to just release it and accept yourself as you are. So then, that kind of actually leads us into the next point, which is the spiritual side of things. Can't be self-aware, can't feel these feelings if you're not tapped in with your spiritual side. Now, spiritual thing, there's the spiritual side of things is different for everyone. Many people, when they hear spiritual, they think religion. Other people just think more on the meditation, that realm of things. Whatever that is for you, that's totally up to you and your decision. I'll tell you my personal side of it with the spiritual side of things. I am a Christian. I love Jesus. That's my beliefs. And so for me, the spiritual side of things, a lot of it is prayer. And it's nurturing that prayer life. It's nurturing my faith and my Christianity. And, I don't know how much whether you're a Christian or not, how much you know about this, believe in this, whatever. But to me, Christianity is not actually a religion. It's more of a relationship. I believe I have a relationship with Jesus. And through that, right, that's something that I have to nurture and care for. And through doing that, that's caring for myself, because that all comes back, right? Whatever that is for you, though, there's, everyone has their own beliefs and their own faith, and, that's totally your prerogative and up to you. And there's no judgment anyway with that, right? And that's the beauty of it. But yeah, I think regardless of your religion and your beliefs and whatever, I think meditation and prayer are incredibly important. Meditation is so key in being able to be self-aware, because if you're not listening to yourself, if you're not hearing yourself, your body's always trying to tell you things. Your mind's always trying to tell you things. You have a billion thoughts swirling around up in your mind all day, every day. And if you're not taking that time to listen, right, how are you going to know how to get better? And so to me, that's one of the best forms of self-care. And a lot of people get intimidated when they think about meditation, and they're like, well, I don't know how to meditate. Like, I don't know like even how to get my start in that. Like what do I do? It's less about what you do, more about what you don't do. Honestly, meditation does not have to be legs crossed, like you see in the movies or whatever, like with the monks or whatever. That's not how meditation's got to be. Like, can be that if that's what it is for you, cool. I can literally just be sitting there. Sometimes I do that, like, especially at the end of the day before bed. There are days where I'm like, a lot of times I read. It's typically what I try to do before bed. But some days, especially if I've had a really busy day, there's been a lot going on. I'm like, I don't want any more information. I don't want to do anything. I want to literally just, I'll make some tea. I'll make some chamomile tea right before bed. And no music, no sound, no nothing. I will literally just sit there and drink tea and just sit there. And whatever thoughts come to my mind, that's what comes to my mind. And to me, that's a form of meditation. Granted, then it's also, if you are trying to get your start in meditation, YouTube is huge. Use it, dude. Great resource. Tons of stuff on there. There's also plenty of apps and that sort of thing you can download to help you get started. Fully guided meditations and that sort of thing. But dude, it's simply, at its core, it's just doing nothing. It's just sitting there and listening. And you can even sit there and just focus on something, like focus on the sound of, your fan or your AC running or whatever, and just really allow yourself to listen. And to me, that's one of the best forms of self-care, because I think that's kind of sort of the starting point with it, because how can we care for any of these other parts of ourselves? How can we care for our physical self? How can we care for our mental self if we're not taking that time to listen and to nurture that spiritual side of us? So whatever the spiritual side looks like for you, I think regardless, it needs to be nurtured. And I think you need to, I think that's all a part of self-care. Now, finally, we get into the social side of it. Now, you're probably going, I thought this was self-care. What does social have to do with it? It's all a part of it. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, it's all a part of it. And it all ties together both ways, right? First of all, we have to recognize that self-care isn't actually a selfish thing. The whole point of self-care and taking care of ourselves is so we can put our best self out there into the world to make an impact on other people and to help other people and to care for other people and to be there for other people and the people in our lives, right? So if we're not doing that, and if we're not taking care of ourselves, we cannot put our best selves out there, right? So even as an introvert like myself, we still are filled up by community. At the end of the day, when you have a good community, a solid community, that's the key there, supporting you and building you up, that's one of the best forms of self-care, right? Have you ever left like a conversation or, hanging out with people and you just feel good? You're like, man, you feel filled up. You had to put yourself in that situation. To me, that's a form of self-care. Selectively choosing who you surround yourself with. Surrounding yourself with a community of other people practicing true self-care, that's a thriving community, right? Doing that is a form of self-care. It's a conscious decision that you have to make. To me, that's self-care. And it's here's how I would define self-care. It's a conscious decision. I really can't say that word, but it's cool. A conscious decision that you have to make to benefit you the most in the long run. To me, that's what real self-care is at the end of the day. And just remembering that you can't put your best self out there if you aren't taking care of yourself. So it all ties together. It all comes full circle. And just something to think about. I think our world really, self-care is something that's talked about more than ever now, but I feel like it gets very misconstrued a lot in our world. I feel like it's very misconceived in a lot of ways. And it's, it's good that we're talking about it more. It's good that we're getting it out there more, but we need to recognize what self-care really is and how we can really be caring for ourselves. And, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to go move your body and work out. It's uncomfortable to make the healthier choice when deciding what to eat and to make sure you're taking those supplements that are going to be helping you. It's uncomfortable to, when you got a lot on your plate, to just be like, okay, I need to take some time to just rest and recharge right now, right? It's uncomfortable to say, you know what? I'm going to put my phone away. I need to stop looking at social media right now. I need, this isn't benefiting me. This is not supporting me. It's uncomfortable to have patience with yourself. It's uncomfortable to feel your feelings. It's uncomfortable to dive into spirituality and listen to ourselves and just sit there and be with ourselves. It can even be uncomfortable to pray. It can be uncomfortable to, dive into faith, the faith side of things. It can be uncomfortable to put ourselves out there in a social situation and to dive into those kinds of, conversations. And it can be uncomfortable to get in a community. But once we do all these things, we find ourselves thriving so much more, and we find ourselves living a fulfilled life. I always say that fulfillment is on the other side of your comfort zone. It's just outside your comfort zone. You just got to break out of it. And to me, that is true self-care. I can't personally see a better form of self-care than that. But anyways, that's pretty much all I got for this episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, your take on it. Love to know just kind of, what maybe you define self-care as. What is self-care to you? What are some ways that you practice true self-care, in your life? I would love to hear about it. Would love to know about it. Hit me up. Let me know. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, if you'd like to be a guest, come on here, just chat, no pressure. But hey, I would love to have you on here. Would love to chat with you. So anyways, if you're watching this over on YouTube, well, leave us a subscribe. We appreciate it greatly. Turn on that bell notification so you know when a new episode drops. And please hit that like button. Helps out with the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. Speaking of algorithm, wow, really having a hard time saying words right now, huh? Speaking of algorithm, if you're listening on one of the major streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, if you could leave us a rating and review, it helps us out a ton. It really does, just with the algorithm and rankings and whatnot. And I honestly also love reading your reviews. I love hearing your feedback. I love hearing back from you. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Next week, stay tuned for a guest episode coming your way. And until then, keep on diving. What's up, guys? Jake here again. Just wanted to thank you real quick for listening to this episode of the Uncomfortable Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask that you would please go leave us a rating or review wherever you're listening to this. Really helps us out, really helps us tell more people about the uncomfortable and to help more people live fulfilled lives. So if you could go take 2 seconds to go do that, that would mean the world. Now go take one actionable step towards your dreams today and to apply what you heard here on this episode. You got this. I'm rooting for you as always. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Uncomfortable Podcast.
Take yourself out your comfort zone. If you want to be ordinary, you ain't even got to listen to me.
Comfort is overrated. We've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.